Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar on AI, where we ask the question of how AI will shape the future of destination marketing. My name is David Proctor. I'm a senior lecturer and researcher at NHL Stenden University in the Netherlands. I'll be your host today as we dive into this very important subject that has repercussions for society and all of us here. AI has, without doubt, been a game changer in society. It is transforming destination marketing by forcing a shift from broad campaigns to hyper-personalized and predictive experience that curate itineraries and recommendations in real time. It also redefines visibility, as destinations must provide structured, machine-readable data to be discoverable in AI-driven search and travel planning. In this webinar, we're going to bring together some of the thought leaders and practitioners who are setting the future agenda when it comes to the evolution of AI and destination marketing. To begin with, I must say that this webinar is part of a series of webinars called Creating What's Next, and it is brought to you by the Hotel Management School of NHL Stenden University of Applied Sciences and the European Tourism Futures Institute, which is also based at NHL Stenden. Together, the Hotel School and the overall Academy of Leisure, Tourism and Hospitality constitutes one of Europe's largest providers of hospitality and tourism education. We also use an educational concept called design-based education, where we work across academies and with industry partners. The Hotel School and ETFI publish two academic research journals. They are the Research and Hospitality Management Journal and the Journal of Tourism Futures. I'm going to briefly introduce today's speakers before we get started. Our first speaker, I hope I'm going to pronounce their names correctly, is Signe Jungersted. Signe is the CEO and founding partner of the NAO, or Now Group, based in Copenhagen, or Copenhagen, as the Danes would say, I would imagine. I looked at the group's website before getting on here today, and I saw something that actually stayed with me and resonated with me. The group describes itself as a strategy and ideas bureau. Before launching Now, Signe has had a varied and long and interesting career. Again, something that stood out for me, which I can't really get out of my head at this point, was when she was heading up the wonderful Copenhagen DMO organization, where she coined the term local HUD and developed their strategy for 2020. This is what I can't get out of my head. The strategy was called The End of Tourism as We Know It, which for me is, I see there's a song in there somewhere. Our second speaker this morning will be Professor Faizan Ali from the University of Galway in Ireland. For those of you who haven't clocked my accent yet, I am Irish, so I have a particular affinity for the town of Galway. Faizan has the rather enviable and distinguished title of established professor, but he's just told me that he's not that long established in Galway, having moved, possibly for the climate, I'm not sure, from sunny Florida to Galway. But I'm sure he will become part of the fixtures and fittings going forward and become part of Galway's wonderful history and folklore itself. Faizan is a seriously prolific author. He's published over 130 peer-reviewed articles, and his work sits at the intersection of marketing, consumer behavior, tourism, and emerging technologies such as AI and robotics. Our third speaker is Alexander Rayner. Alexander is the CEO of Smart Data Travel, based in Dubai. I think Alex is in Bangkok today. Obviously leads a very international and cosmopolitan lifestyle, as do all of our group. Alexander is deeply embedded in the world of big data and travel analytics. He is the founder of smartdata.travel and has worked as an advisor to several UN specialized panels on travel intelligence. He's also the mind behind Pata M-Power, a data-as-a-service platform that has been adopted by governments, including Tourism Malaysia and Queensland Events and Tourism. His work focuses on making data actually useful, which sounds totally obvious to all of us, but is a serious universal challenge, especially in these times where so much data is available. And finally, we have Abigail Shaw of Visit Scotland. Abigail is SEO manager at Visit Scotland, where she leads work ensuring Scotland stays visible in a rapidly changing AI-driven search environment. As AI increasingly shapes how travelers discover and evaluate destination, her focus extends beyond optimization to governance, ethics, and responsible digital management. Today, she focuses on the ethical and responsible use of AI as a tool for destination marketing. Just before giving the floor over to our speakers, just some brief housekeeping notes. I'm essentially today's Time Lord. Don't call me Doctor Who. My students call me Dr. Proctor. I'll be keeping the speakers on track since we are somewhat strapped for time. Each of our guests will have approximately 10 minutes to provide their presentation, and only after all of them have finished will we take questions from our audience. There is a Q&A tab at the top of your screen. Please put your questions in there. Don't use the chat feature. If you like a question and possibly were thinking along similar lines of asking a similar question, you might give it a thumbs up. It could save you time. Please include the name of the speaker or speakers that you feel the question should be addressed to. So, without further delay, it's time to begin with today's first speaker. Sinja Jongered's presentation is called Learnings from a Community of 100+ Destination Marketing Organizations Working with AI. The floor is yours, Sinja.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to be here. It's very exciting. I'm really honored to be speaking alongside these great experts and super curious about where the conversation will go. I have 10 minutes, so I got to dive in. So if I could get the first slide. So I am the CEO and co-founder of Group Now. Thank you for the nice introduction as well. I have a history, a past in the world of DMOs, destination marketing or management organizations, and hence that's also going to be my key focus of the presentation I have here. But we really come out of that world. We work a lot with destinations around the world on strategy, on innovation, and all of that kind of drives us in Group Now to focus on, okay, what's next? Really the topic of today's webinar as well. And a few years ago, obviously everyone started talking about generative AI, and we thought this is interesting. Something's really going to happen in this space, and it's going to impact the way of destinations and how DMOs work. And then we launched the program that we called AI Opener for Destinations, which is a play on eye opener, hence the very quirky eyes that you'll see throughout my presentation. So next slide, please. So since we launched the program in 23, we've had now more than 120 destinations that have been part of the program. It runs in sort of 12-month cycles. So we've just kicked off the cycle for 26 in the European cohort. And we also have a North American cohort, which is run by our strategic partner, Miles Partnership. In the European cohort, we're working together in collaborative partnership with European Travel Commission and Edinburgh Futures Institute. And then all the great destinations, which is a really great mix of regional DMOs, of city destinations and national tourism organizations, including Visit Scotland, who we'll also hear from later today. So please, next slide. The program is built around meeting up on a regular basis. So we have monthly live sessions where we discuss not only AI for destination marketing, but all aspects of really how is AI impacting tourism and travel, and especially like the work of and the functions of the destination organizations. So we invite lots of experts to help provide perspective on that, and then also really try and highlight the use cases, who's doing what and how, and so everyone's learning from each other, which is why I also called my presentation a community, because it really is a community, and I think we're in that space right now where everyone is very open to sharing what's working and not working and learning from each other, as it's kind of a little bit learning by doing, I think, still at this point. Next slide, please. What we did when we first kicked off the program was a survey of perception and usage of AI in 23, late 23, and then we did another one in 25. So I just wanted to give a couple of highlights of those results and comparisons so you can kind of see where it's going. So one thing, and this will not be a surprise, I think, to anyone on this webinar today, but really what's on the rise is obviously familiarity. So from 23 to 25, there's quite an increase in been destination professionals saying that they feel very familiar with some of sort of the main large language models and tools that people are using. Next slide, please. And then at the same time, we can also see that it's really taking off in different kinds of users, and the diversity of use is also increasing, from anything like content production, translation, brainstorming, proofreading, chatbots, virtual assistants, and so on. And then next slide, please. And finally, we can also see whereas in the first survey that we did in 23, there was a lot of apprehension, I would say, almost fear. What is this going to do? Will it take my job? I think that was a huge discussion in the beginning. And now what we're seeing in the survey from 25 is really much more of an excitement and a realization, I think, that AI is actually having a positive impact. It's boosting work. It's making work more efficient. And in general, I will say destination professionals are also expressing that they're quite curious about it. What is interesting also, and we can go into that as part of the discussion as well, what we can see is that it's still to a high degree driven by individual passions, individual interests, whereas sort of the organizational approach at the executive level and at the strategic level, maybe that's what's lacking a little bit, sort of trying to catch up with those individual passionates that have kind of run ahead in the front. Next slide, please. So looking across the project, and so I was very keen on staying within my 10 minutes so I can feel that I'm speed talking. But in sort of looking across all the use cases that we've had presented so far in the program, what we see from all the great destinations that are taking part, there's sort of a grouping, I would say, of how AI is impacting and is used as part of destination marketing today. So this is kind of the image or the present situation. So there is a big focus on discoverability, and I think Abigail is also going to talk a little bit more about that. So really, how are you discoverable in the large language models? How does AI find you? All this idea of GEO or generative optimization. Then there's a huge focus on chatbots and trip planners, either building your own or partnering up with some of the bigger ones that are out there. There are lots of new platforms popping up. We've had Mindtrip a couple of times speak as part of the AI opener as well. Then another aspect of that is really sort of the avatars that are more for storytelling. So less around sort of planning specific inspiration, but more on sort of the branding and the storytelling around a destination, whether that be like an immersive experience or something historical that comes up. And then obviously multimodal content production. Lots of destinations are using AI for content production, whether that be visuals or text production and so on, video, of course. And then there's a huge focus, I think, also on sort of data analysis, monitoring sentiment, getting insights, and also shaping and making those insights accessible to a larger audience. So that be the destination ecosystem that each of the destination organizations represent and typically help enable access this new technology and understanding what it means to them. And then finally, and I think this is quite new, and we are seeing that a lot in 26 as a demand from a lot of the DMOs that are part of it, more focus on sort of automation and how to make more adaptive marketing or campaign flows. How are you using some of those technologies for that? So next slide, please. And so just a few examples, but there are lots of examples. Vancouver obviously was one of the first ones, I think, that really stood out with their own chatbot that they launched on their website. It's a very good one. It works really well for trip planning, conversational interaction. As an example, on the more sort of storytelling avatars, I think many of you will have heard of the German National Tourist Bureau's Emma, their avatar AI influencer, which is, I think, more of a storyteller. It does lean into trip planning, but it is more of a storytelling element. And then obviously on the multimodal production or content, what's I think interesting is that there's now new discussions happening. So I included this example, which is from Visit Linz, which they created this whole video on using AI for like, I think it's called like Take a Risk in Linz. So it's very interesting. I can't include the whole video here, but you should definitely go check it out. But really, I think there are new discussions happening around who are we and how we use AI generated content and visuals and so on. So that's very interesting. And then finally, for the data and insights, I think everyone's right now talking about Destination Canada's Aurora AI, which is a huge data platform that also really is making insights accessible not only to destinations, but to small and medium-sized tourism businesses, and helping them really use the insights available through conversational AI. So next slide, please. So I think really looking at what's next, I think when we listen to a lot of the DMOs in the program, it's about automation, agentic AI. And I think there is this shift into AI being more supportive to actually being more, I would say, almost operational, executive. And so you could be looking at a shift entirely if we're really sort of thinking about the role of the DMO from being the marketeer to actually just being the manager of agents that are marketeering. So I think that's an interesting thought experiment. And I think some of the other speakers will talk more about that. And then I think there's a very strong role for the DMO looking forward in orchestrating intelligence, almost as sort of the new DMO mandate with AI and with all the new platforms that are out there and strong partnerships that exist, who actually understands the traveler behavior and how to actually apply that in this world of huge platforms and technology. And I think it's very interesting. Many of you have probably followed as well. Mindtrip just launched a new partnership with Sabre and PayPal. And I think the future of destination marketing organizations will also be to consider how do you position yourself in relation to those platforms and the insights and knowledge and data that they will have. And then finally, I think a discussion that I'm seeing more and more as well is sort of how AI strategy is also brand policy, and how you need to discuss how you're applying AI in alignment with your destination and your community and your organizational values. So who are you? What do you stand for? And that essentially is also reflected in how you're using AI, which tools you're choosing to use. Are you using AI generated images and so on? So I think that sort of awareness of the brand link is quite a new one to a lot of the destinations, but also a very interesting and important discussion to have. So I think I was within exactly 10 minutes, I hope, David.
10 minutes, 12 seconds, but we won't penalize you for that.
All right, thank you very
really
much.
excellent, fascinating insights. I think that sets us already up for the audience looking to ask questions later on in the webinar. We're going to move on. I know it's quite rapid, quite quick, but again, thank you, Sinja, for that. We're going to move on to Professor Faizan Ali and his presentation, which is called When AI Designs the Destination Experience, Rethinking Destination Marketing in the Age of Algorithms. So, Faizan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate the introduction, and I also want to thank the organizers for having me today. Brilliant presentation preceding mine. So I think there would be some kind of overlap, but that's a good thing that we are thinking along the same lines. My presentation in the next 10 minutes, I would want to challenge basic framing that I think most of us in the hospitality and tourism research are quietly accepting. And the idea is that the AI is a tool for destination marketing. It is a sophisticated tool, obviously, a powerful one, but a tool nonetheless. So what I want to argue today in my presentation is that this framing is not adequate anymore in today's world. And I want to do that through real life situations and real life case studies, things that are happening right now, not at a larger scale, at a smaller scale, but those are the indications of things that are coming through, and through a conceptual reframing that I think has significant implications for how we think about the role of DMOs and how the DMOs are shaping tourist experiences, and obviously our research agenda from a professorial standpoint. Next slide, please, David. So as you see on this slide, what I have here is the conventional view and the conventional view of AI as a promotional tool. I think in the previous presentation, it was also mentioned about the chatbots and assistants and smarter ads and stuff like that. I think that it is a brilliant view. I want to be fair to it. It is a conventional view. It's not a wrong view, but it's a conventional view, a traditional one. We know that larger travel agents or OTAs like Booking.com or Expedia have started using AI for a long time to create hyper-targeted advertising, serving the right offer to the right traveler at the right time, based on their obviously browsing behavior and cookies and real-time demand, and even to some extent the local weather signals and all that. Then there are platforms like Make My Trip in India that has integrated generative AI assistant into how users discover different destinations, how review for hotels are filtered conversationally, and then how voice navigation is embedded into an OTA platform, right? So in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, they have said that they are going to deepen their partnership with OpenAI to integrate even more generative AI into user experience and all that. So we know that airlines, DMOs, they are using to a large extent AI and different aspects of AI, such as conversational agents or neural networks to forecast tourism demand and dynamically adjust both the pricing and the marketing spend. And all of this is real. This is all things that matter for the industry. But notice that in all these examples and all these case studies, what's happening is that AI is used as an instrument that is influencing decisions. The tourist is still in the driver's place, like the tourist makes all these decisions using AI as an instrument. And I think that the assumption that I was mentioning in the start of my presentation is something that is breaking down, and I'll explain this in the next few slides as we move on. So David, if you can please move to the next slide. So here is my central argument that I want to propose in today's presentation. I think that AI is no longer influencing the decision to travel. It designs the experience in itself, right? So the reason why I say this is because if we look at the tourist journey, there are three distinct stages: the discovery stage, the planning stage, and then the in-destination stage, right? And if you look at how tourist moves through these stages, AI is embedded into all these three stages structurally. And when I say structurally, I mean that it is not really a layer on the top of the experience in itself, but it is the architectural aspect of the experience. And that distinction is really important for practice as well as the theory. Can we move to the next slide, please, David? Thank you. Here are some real-life case studies that I want to present today. Again, these are smaller case studies, and these are indication for things to come, obviously not on the larger scale. The first one is the algorithmic discovery. This is an interesting one. It is from where you guys are based, from Amsterdam. And TikTok was a brilliant example here. So TikTok's recommendation algorithm, it brought up this, the way algorithm works, it is really based on the engagement and how people are engaging with the content, not really just the follower counts and all that. But what this TikTok algorithm did, it brought up a very small fry shop called Fable Fright in Amsterdam as a global phenomena where a lot of people were visiting the shop overnight. So if you really look into this case study, there was no marketing campaign, there was no DMO involvement, no advertising spend whatsoever. The algorithm decided that the place was cool. It started promoting the place, and then within a short time, there were groups of people visiting this place to an extent where the local residents have gone into court for litigation because of the disruption that this was creating to the local life. So now if you think about the destination or the DMO, the DMO had no say into this local shop being promoted at that larger scale. The second aspect here is the experience sequencing. Again, this is an interesting thing that I just came across. Expedia has partnered with Google Gemini to create something very cool called trip matching. And what it does is it allows users to feed an Instagram reel. So if you are watching any Instagram reel that looks very cool to you, travel related Instagram reel, you can put that reel into the trip matching feature of Expedia. And what Expedia would do is identify all the locations in that reel and then create a completely bookable itinerary for you in return. And if you go one step further down the road where Gemini comes into the picture, it then integrates Google Flights, hotels, and maps into a single conversational booking flow for users to move across, right? So that's the second case here. The third case here is the in-destination navigation, which again is Google Lens. And what Google Lens does in real time translates menus, it identifies different landmarks and answers what is this for millions of tourists globally. Just with using one app, right? So it is functionality, obviously, an always-on AI tour guide that is in your pocket on your fingertips at any time that you have, and it mediates not just the information that you as a tourist get, but also the interpretation of what tourists are noticing, how do they make sense of things, and what gets encoded into their memory. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so this is another real world case that I want to present that's of an Amsterdam. I want to really think about this for a moment because I think it's really an instructive case study, what we have right now about how algorithmic destination design can look in practice, but then how it can also backfire to some extent. As I mentioned about the Fable Fried, the tiny fry shop, as I mentioned, with zero DMO involvement, with zero advertisement spend, the Google Map and obviously the TikTok algorithm has brought it into the must-visit shop in Amsterdam city, and also embedded it into different type of itineraries and different type of travel guides and stuff like that, right? So the neighborhood has become very overwhelmed with this, and what has happened is that the residents cannot walk into their own streets. The other shops actually felt that their businesses were going down because of the disruption that was created due to the long lines in front of this one particular shop. And what happened is that the city of Amsterdam has really gone, under pressure because of this algorithmic, destination promotion. It caps now overnight tourists to stay at 20 million annually, and then new development of small shops altogether to some extent. Now, what I must say here is that the courts have ruled against these type of things from the city of Amsterdam. This is still an ongoing thing, so we don't know what the outcome would look like, but nonetheless, it should highlight how algorithms become part of the crisis at a destination level. Can we go to the next slide, please? So here I would say that based on what I just mentioned, this brings me to my conceptual reframing that is at the heart of my talk. And this is that we are moving from the traditional role of DMOs that is defined based on marketing, from destination marketing into experience orchestration, which my previous colleague has mentioned in detail about how AI is being used to orchestrate different type of experiences. I don't need to talk about this in detail because of the time limitations. Can we move to the next slide, please, very quickly? Now, here I would highlight three critical challenges with evidence, and obviously the webinar is being recorded, so I have provided the links to the papers that have mentioned this. These three critical challenges are important as we are moving into more and more implementation of AI into DMO or generally into tourism marketing. The first one is tourist meaning making. This is important because recent research shows that more than 71% of US travelers are using AI tools into their trip planning. Now, we don't have a lot of research to see how AI is changing the philosophy of travel experiences, how it is impacting the authenticity, the agency, and how tourists construct meaning from their journeys. It's a significant gap. So students who are attending this webinar may want to look into this particular gap. The second one is authenticity, which in my opinion is at risk. I have written a couple of papers on this and how AI is changing authentic experiences and how AI is bringing in new types of, to some extent, even misrepresenting the cultural nuances of different authentic experiences and all that. And then the third one is governance gap, which again, I think is really important because at the pace that AI is moving or technology is moving, I think at the governance level, we are not matching that pace. So you would see a lot of new phenomena coming up with no legislation around them and all that type of stuff. So that's another significant gap. Can we go to the next slide, which would be about my 5 forecast for the next decade, which was asked to talk about what I think will happen in the next 10 years or so. Not going into deep conversation about this, but the first one, in my opinion, would be agentic AI, which would take over trip booking that was previously mentioned as well. The second one would be destination visibility wars, and this is because of the way algorithms are working now to promote destinations. So it's not about how we are getting tourist attention. It's not the competition around that, but really about how algorithms or different type of AI tools would understand the destinations and promote them to the tourists. The third one would be AI governance as policy imperative. The fourth one is hyper-personalized homogeneous places. Again, this is important because not only one person is going to AI to ask them to create trip itineraries and stuff like this. Many people are going to these platforms. So the way homogeneous places are promoted to people, hyper-personalization is important. And then the last one would be the DMOs and their role as algorithm partners rather than destination promoters. And we go to the last slide, please. So as I come to the end of my presentation, I think that it's very important to understand that the algorithm is the new destination marketer. The question is not really about how AI is shaping destination experiences because it's already doing that. The question is whether destinations will be a passive object within the algorithmic curation or an active architect for their own experience journeys. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Faizan. Again, extremely interesting. A lot of things to unpack there. But I would just like to remind the audience, use the Q&A button, ask your questions, and we'll get to them at the end of all presentations. Our third speaker this morning is Alexander, or Alex Rayner, on the subject of next generation agentic AI that thinks, reasons, and acts with purpose. Alex, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you for the introduction, and thank you. I'd like to share my thank you with the rest of the speakers about being part of this session. I'm meeting new people today, and the presentations have been outstanding. So next slide, please. I'm going to be talking about a very different area, but yeah, basically what happened a few years ago, back in 2022. I did a course, executive education course on AI, which led into me being offered an opportunity to become an advisor with a company called Vulcane. Vulcane is a startup, and Vulcane specializes in causal AI. So it's all about the why. Why did something happen? Understanding why something happened, and having the backup of being able to explain it and to have results as a result. So on the next slide, we'll show you a little bit more of how that works. So we look at historical data, and we find correlations as normally does. We complement all this with human expert knowledge, which is something that Gen doesn't do. Generative AI doesn't do that. So fundamentally, this is the uniqueness of the why part. It's having the human component introduced. And then what we do is we look at the outcomes that come out, and we look at the past. We do back testing. And once we get a confidence level that's 95% or above, we adopt the models and start to make predictions with confidence. So on the next slide, we'll show you a little bit more detail. So typically we work with a index, and we complement the index with the various data sets, which includes data from clients plus data that's publicly available. We create baselines, and then we identify force vectors and inflection points, and then we come out with predictions. Now, the predictions based on causal AI are much more accurate. That is the key benefit of causal AI. It is the accuracy. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you a little bit more detail. And basically, we have currently in our system over 1 billion data sets. This is data, some of it's free, some of it we subscribe to, and it ranges from FRED, which is the Federal Reserve economic data, to Moody's, to the S&P 500. We have the live real-time feeds from stock exchanges like the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ and so forth. And all this data, is then compared to a client data. Now, the client data needs to be washed. It needs to go into the washing machine and be made usable for AI. That's one of the fundamental problems with data. It's not AI ready. So yeah, that's the key value and a benefit that we have to go through. Then, of course, we combine it all with the human domain experts, and then we come out with the various solutions. But ultimately, we end up with like a Lego system, blocks of indexes and feature sets, which are very accurate, which are explainable and actionable. So it's not just you getting some data, but you actually also know what to do with it. Hence the word, process, being able to do processing, process flows and so forth. So on the next slide, we kind of can do a little comparison table to show the difference between what the Vulcane platform does using AI, causal AI, versus generative AI. And as you can see, generative AI has a lot of limitations, predominantly the fact that you're lacking the human expert, but generative AI is very limited in terms of what you can do with it. And it's also very limiting in terms of explaining the why. So that's kind of the area where we're heading with all this. On the next slide, basically, these are a couple of the clients that we have been working with since 2022. Vulcane is a startup, but last year in 2025, it became a public company. So not only am I an advisor, I'm also a shareholder in this company because I believe it's got a very bright future. Now, to give you an example how this data is used in practice, let's take a product like cheese. Now, cheese has a use-by date. It's perishable. So you come to a date when, if you haven't sold the cheese in the supermarket, you either throw it out and you have no revenue, or you offer a discount, you do a promotion. So the question is, when do you do that promotion, and what should be the discount? So using causal AI, we're able to maximize the profit. And that's why people like Kellogg's and Pepsi are doing all their promotions with Vulcane. Vulcane is telling them exactly what price and when they should be doing their promotions based on causal AI. And so basically, we will be I'll give you an example. The cheese can be discounted by 15%, or it can be discounted by 20%, but the profit is going to be the same. So why would you offer 20%? That's a very simple, basic example of how the causal AI is used. Into the future, my actual role was to help to take all this technology and apply it to tourism. So that's where we want to go next. At the moment, we're in CPG and finance and insurance, where there is a huge market, and all our resources are basically committed, and tourism is in the pipeline into the future. So we hope to be helping destinations, airlines, hotels, and various segments of tourism in the future. But yeah, the key message at the end is it's all about the why, understanding the why and being able to action it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And on the next slide, I've included my email, but also the email of our CEO, Greg Duffel. So feel free to reach out if you're interested in any partnerships or engagement going forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Alex. Again, fascinating, very good presentation, straight to the point. Great to hear the expression causal AI. I hadn't been really familiar with that one before, but it really provides some food for thought. We're going to go to our fourth speaker. So last but not least, we have Abigail Shaw, whose presentation is called Personalization with Purpose, an Ethical AI Companion for Bonnie Scotland. Floor is yours, Abigail.
Thanks, David. Yeah, no pressure going after all these wonderful experts. I'll try and keep the standards high. If you could just go to my first slide, please. So obviously, as many of you know, because you're already here, travel planning is changing pretty rapidly at the moment. I think the most recent reports were that there were almost like 1 billion monthly users across ChatGPT, Gemini. It's probably even more than that, and I only checked this like last month. So AI is super central now to how people are planning their trips and gathering information on the destinations they're interested in. But the issue we have is that current trip planning is still quite fragmented and generic. So visitors are trying to find authentic, personalized itineraries. AI doesn't personalize enough. It doesn't know them very well. And our website content has to cater to too many people to do that. So many platforms like ChatGPT also rely on, user prompting, and they're pretty prone to surfacing the common suggestions we often associate with over-tourism, which is obviously not ideal for us. So if destination marketing organisations and national tourism organisations like Visit Scotland aren't adapting, we do risk losing the control we have over the messaging we have around our destination. And that's by part of our strategy to sort of grow Scotland's visitor economy, is focusing on influencing visitors at that early stage of planning and the sort of inspiration and research stages, in the hope that we can then influence the decisions that they come to make later. Next slide, please. So to meet this problem head on, we're having a look at building a multilingual AI travel companion, we're calling it, using all the data we currently have at Visit Scotland, so our own data, to deliver sort of real-time, localized visitor information. So there's no prompting required for this tool, which makes it immediately more accessible to the average potential tourist. I know at least for Scotland, our US visitors do tend to be on that older side, so they're probably not that experienced with, getting the best out of an AI with their prompting skills. It also uses trusted data and imagery, so there's authenticity, there's still that visual appeal that AI isn't necessarily bringing in at the moment. And then it means we're promoting regional spread and sustainability by surfacing our lesser known destinations and alternative times of year to visit. So ultimately, this is allowing us for deeper personalization than the sort of generic ChatGPT Gemini can offer at the moment. Next slide, please. So what exactly are the benefits of us looking at that? Obviously, selfishly, it gets people coming to our site and not just immediately jumping off to ChatGPT, but more generally, for visitors, it does mean there's easier, faster planning and more authentic experiences being surfaced. Like I said, if you use the sort of AI tools that are out there at the moment, you will get a lot of those classic over-tourism, Edinburgh Castle suggestions that we know are not actually super personalised and are generally suffering with some over-tourism issues. For Scotland, it's supporting that economic resilience and sustainability goals. And then just for the public sector, because we are a public sector organisation, it's sort of demonstrating ethical, responsible AI use that is aligned with the Scottish AI Playbook, which for those that don't know, is a guide that was made by the AI Alliance and the Scottish Government to help businesses adopt ethical and trustworthy AI practices. So that is an online resource available to anyone. And it does all this while gathering sort of valuable real-time data to improve our user experience as well as our content on the website. So next slide, please. So what have we done? Of course, all of this sort of started as a question with us, could AI transform travel planning for Scotland? Creating a sort of proof of concept version of the tool gave us that answer pretty immediately, which was, as you'll all know because I'm here, yes. It showed that AI-driven tools are a seamless way to create personalized itineraries. It proved both technical feasibility and strategic value for us. The AI solution also doesn't just plan trips. It's not the same as a sort of decision tree quiz that you might see in sort of classic marketing. It's bringing in real-time insights that are making us more agile and responsive than we've ever been able to be before. And through collaboration with StormID, who are the agency we worked on with this tool, we've uncovered new opportunities to optimize and prepare the data, again, our data that we have for full AI readiness. So in short, and watch, I'm about to give a really cheesy line, we're not just imagining the future of travel planning, but we are building that future ourselves. Next slide, please. So our solution is built on ethical foundations. Transparency and trust are at the core of everything we've done. And we created an ethics statement which ensures that users understand how the recommendations we're giving are generated. It has disclaimers like, AI can make mistakes, and verification dates for dynamic information. We've also ensured that there are dedicated feedback channels within Visit Scotland for not just this tool, but AI in general. We have robust governance with 3 groups internally that oversee the development. So we have an AI lab group that look at the security of AI. We have an AI steering group that look at the ethics and the overall governance. And then we have the AI working group, which test our solutions for dissemination across the wider organization. Ethics are central to everything we do, and building that solution is the best way to create a tool that visitors trust and believe in. Next slide. So what have we actually built? What does it look like? So the tool asks visitors to answer an initial series of questions to try and understand the experiences most relevant to their interests and traveller type. So things like, what areas of Scotland are you interested in? How long is your break to Scotland? Who are you travelling with? And it captures those core non-negotiables that a lot of travellers have before they even begin thinking about the specifics of their holiday travel planning. It then asks a series of tailored follow-up questions that are based on that visitor's initial answers to generate a custom itinerary. So that's things like, in said destination you chose, what activity types excite you? What pace do you prefer to take on holiday? And the result for that is a fully custom, shareable, and editable itinerary. It promotes lesser-known experiences and pushes off-season travel. So next slide, please. So more generally, what's next for us at Visit Scotland now that we have this proof of concept? So the proof of concept actually won us an award at the Future Scot AI Challenge, which only really reinforced our passion to create the tool. So we are now in discussions to make that concept a reality. I think the next stage of that would be developing a sort of 1-year beta tool. It's not something we're keen to immediately jump and make live and available to everyone. It takes a few iterations. But it's also not all about custom built tools for us. We know that alongside these things, we need to adapt our approach to web content, make sure our website is following with the way the world's going. We need to influence where visitors are remaining to use tools like ChatGPT. They won't all choose to come to our website and use the tool we've built. So this includes redefining success, our metrics, shifting towards creating experiential, contextual content, providing unique value that AI can't replicate. So it's not just about trying to get into AI, but also kind of like what Faisal was talking about, making sure that you are unique amongst this world of bots. Adapting our existing content and structures so that we are becoming that source for not only the bots, but also humans are still important too. And focusing less on traffic volumes. We know if people are using AI, you can get traffic from ChatGPT, but they don't need to do that. Mostly people are getting all their information in the tool. So we need to start looking at what success is for us that isn't just number of people coming to the website. So it's looking more at engagement signals, the quality of traffic that we do get when we do get that traffic. And that is my very quick overview of what we've been up to at Visit Scotland. Thank you very much.
Very interesting. Thank you, Abigail. A lovely, very interesting, brief presentation. You were very efficient there in your timing. You were under the 10 minutes. Thank you all for the wonderful presentations. I think my AI IQ has maybe either gone up or down. I'm not sure. There's so much information that I got there that I was unaware of that I feel slightly more able to address this type of subject with my colleagues and whatnot. But on the other hand, there's lots I didn't know and lots of terminology that I was unaware of as well. So what we're going to do now, I think that we have a number of questions from the audience. I'm going to open the floor up. Unfortunately, for those in the audience, I'm going to have to read your questions out. We can't allow a free-for-all where we unmute everyone's mics. I also have some questions prepared for our various speakers. So without further ado, just let me stop sharing my screen and we can get on to some of these questions. Right, I'm going to ask the first question here. In deference to my colleague and organizer of the event, Ian Yeoman puts out a general question there for, I think, for all of you, so one of you can take it up. What protocols and controls must destinations follow to protect data? Who would like to take that up? Well, I'm going to go with maybe Abigail to begin with.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a tricky one because obviously data, and especially in the UK with GDPR, it's a very sticky point is maybe the best way of putting it. We obviously you have to have the robust governance. So obviously in Visit Scotland, we do have multiple layers of authentication and how we're using data. We have an internal data protection officer. So any step we take, he is following the full governance for guidelines around how we are making sure we're using data we have ownership of, data we have the right to use. It's nothing, with AI, we don't want to be using people's personal data. It shouldn't be things that fall under GDPR, like your age, your date of birth. It's making sure that when we're talking about data, it's that top level personalization around what someone's seeking from a trip, what their interests are, and not getting too personal. We personally have avoided to use things like logins, so we don't have to deal with the sensitive information around people's email details, although obviously that's something in the future. But definitely just making sure that in your organization, before you start looking at AI, that you have embedded governance with data protection officers and those multiple checkpoints to make sure that you're not just free for all with everyone's data.
But I asked that same question to Alex. You talked about, an unbelievable amount of data that you were working with. I think you said something like 1 billion data sets. How do you address these concerns?
Well, there are various countries, and each country has its sovereign right to have their own legislation. So that is your starting point, is to work and respect the legislation of each state. Then you go to the grouping, so like the GDPRs, and in some of the regions in Asia, for example, they have regional laws, and then you go to organizations. A lot of organizations are starting to develop protocols. Some of the UN agencies, UN Tourism, for example, are developing protocols and ethical procedures. So basically, it's to comply with the huge amount of protocols, restrictions, ethics, guidelines, etc. That is basically the only thing you can do. And there is a lot of countries that are now, if you watch social media legislation, I'm from Australia, and so our Australian government basically said, anyone under 16 is not allowed to use social media anymore. And so I think you're going to start seeing legislation like that be adopted by other countries, because Hong Kong has copied that as well. And I think other Asian countries are looking at adopting similar legislation. And that's kind of creeping into AI, because there is obviously concern about the kids of the future, to protect the kids, but also there is another dimension, and that's cybersecurity, where there's a lot of crime and a lot of fraud going on. So I think this is an area where governments are struggling to keep up. The laws are very, very slow to change. The industry is moving way ahead of any legislator. So it's going to be a challenge, but ultimately, I think the solution that Abigail mentioned, having a person responsible for compliance and for the data, whatever the title of the position is, you need that focal point who does oversee, and that's a new role that is emerging from all this. So that's basically the position that we've taken.
Very, very good, very interesting. But I think following on from that, if I may ask Sinja about this, governments are, they're getting into this argument, they're getting into this what has become a polemic around personal and private data, restricting younger people access and so on. Is this going to limit the growth, the exponential growth that we see of these AI tools within the tourism domain, do you think?
Will it
Or
limit the
stymie
growth?
it? Not
Yeah.
limit it, but kind of, lessen the increase, the progress that we see at an exponential rate over the past few years. Is it going to restrict that in some way or slow it down?
I think it's like with any new technology, and I know some people that are really into AI will say it's not a new technology, but to most of us, it's quite new. And I think, as with any technology, it will, I wouldn't use the word limit, but it will introduce the critical reflection. It will take off sort of the speed of the hype. It will, so I think it's really that which we're seeing now, the more critical questioning on like, who do we want to be in this space? That's a little bit what I was going for as well in my presentation, and asking those questions, understanding that there is that, like I said, it's an AI policy, but it's also a brand policy, and it's an organizational policy, and it should be integrated. And I think that integration and that view of it as being integrated is what's coming now, that we've sort of realized that we're getting beyond the hype, and we're starting to ask the questions that we do need to ask for a technology that is as invasive and overall as this one is.
Very good, very good answer. We have another question here from the audience, from Mohammed Jazir. I'm going to have to read his question out. My question is, how will AI and the social media or super app algorithms help us as marketeers to make the customer feel more valued and engaged? By this, I mean, will these technologies bridge that gap between business and the customer and make them feel closer? Maybe Professor Faizan can address that.
That's a very good question. I think optimistically, yes. Is there a capacity for super apps or AI to do this? Absolutely, there is a gap. There's there's a way to do this. But I think what's important to understand is that this personalization or making people feel valued would depend on how much data is available. So all the data that is available about tourists, about their past experiences or budget, or their in fact, even their mood right now, because there's a new phenomenon of vibe experiences where people are now using AI to create vibe-based experiences. So, of course, there's a way of doing this. There's a potential of doing this. But then at the same time, I think it's also important to understand that there's a difference between feeling valued and being valued. Personalization at this time is really about targeting people based on what the algorithm thinks, based on your previous information or the data around you. So I think as far as the brands and destinations want to close this gap using AI, it would be those who would use AI to listen to what is happening or listen to what customers or travelers or tourists actually need, rather than using AI to target them. That would be the differentiating factor here.
Very good. Yeah, very interesting. And as a question that comes leads on from that in one respect, comes from Jorge, who asks, any of the four speakers, could you recommend an AI tool to build a promotional business website for travel experiences or programs? And why would you recommend it? Now, we're not going to advertise for any particular company here, but what is out there that budding marketeers or destination management organizations could utilize as tools to build promotional business websites? Who would like to take that up? Maybe Abigail, any ideas on that?
It's a good question. I don't know if I even have any examples. I think we've always been very focused on potentially using the workflows or the processes to build AI that other agencies have, but we've not necessarily looked into promotional side of AI. So we're looking at it very much from a content and a recommendations perspective. So So I think there definitely will be some out of there, but I don't personally have any experience in that kind of tool.
I think Signe has an answer to this.
Well, I can bring an example because we are working on a very interesting program which was initiated by two of the Danish destinations, Visit Aarhus and Destination Fyn. They've launched a project called Moving Destinations, which is all about enabling actually the tourism industry, so not the destinations or the DMOs themselves, enabling the tourism industry, which is mainly SMEs, right? Small and medium-sized businesses in sort of adapting and using the AI tools available and critically reflecting on them. And there are actually examples of tourism businesses that have built their own websites or booking sites using some of the vibe coding tools that are available. And there are quite a few like Replit, Lovable, and so on, and many more that are really easily accessible and that you can actually build quite decent, like very thin websites for. And then obviously you have to consider the security of them and so on. But we have seen some really good examples of business owners with very little technical knowledge that actually get really far using those tools.
Very good answer. We have another interesting question come up here that I think opens up another aspect to this whole discussion. It comes from Camelia Kentra. How can less digitally mature destinations prioritize AI initiative when resources are limited? How would you see that, Alex? You have vast international experience there. Maybe I should repeat the question. How can less digitally mature destinations prioritize AI initiative when resources are limited? I think we might be having some technical...
I was trying to find. I've got a list of software I was going to recommend to the earlier person, and I was trying to find my notes. And I lost the screen. So I will try and get that later. The resource issue, that's a big deal for everyone because obviously you need either to have the knowledge or hire people with the knowledge, or you need to invest. And ultimately, it's like anything else. It's the same old question. When the internet came out, what did you do? Did you do a website? Did you spend some money? How did you prioritize it? This is no different. This is no different to any other technology. Mobile first. Are you targeting people who are using mobiles for your business, etc.? So I think ultimately what you need to do is do an ROI. Is it going to generate revenue for you? Is it going to save you cost? AI is typically considered a productivity tool. It is a cost saving. It's a way of automating processes and cutting, reducing expenses. So end of the day, it's a financial decision. It's a profit and loss. It's like if I invest $100, where will I? And I'll save $20 a year. Okay, 5 years, I get a return. That's basically the approach I take.
Okay, a very clear answer, very logical. But a question I also have, let's say, based on that to the rest of the panel is, we have a type of a friction that exists between AI. A lot of you mentioned the human component during your presentations, and there's a type of friction there between AI and issues around authenticity. How do we address that? Or is it's a huge discussion, I think, in this ecosystem at the moment. How would you address those type of issues? For example, Faizan, you talked about the algorithm being the marketeer. How can we relate that to those questions of authenticity?
Right, David, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is a brilliant question. I was actually looking at the questions in the panel as well, on the side panel, and Sophie actually asked something very similar about, the local knowledge and everything and authenticity and AI and all that. So I think right now, while we are talking about this AI and the growth of AI and everything, there's also another very interesting trend. And I, as a researcher, have a lot of interest in that as well. So while we are seeing this huge uptick into AI, there's also an increase in the use of Discord and Reddit and Facebook groups as well. And this is coming from Generation Z, people who are normally thought as algorithm dependent. So they're trying to breaking away from algorithm and going more into people-to-people interaction and seeing like what other real travelers are recommending rather than what AI is recommending, right? So I think the best would be to really understand the benefits of both the worlds, like where AI shines and where people shine. And for a destination, I think both of them matter, right? So for a particular destination, obviously efficiency, effectiveness matters, logistic matters, but then at the same time, the hidden meanings and authenticity and the untold stories and the back streets and everything, all of that also matters for telling the story for a destination, right? So I think the ideal situation would be the marriage of the both, to let AI do the logistics and kind of the planning and all that, and then letting the DMO tell the authentic stories about the destination. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is algorithms require a lot of data feeding. And I think right now the data feeding is not complete. So I think also the role of DMOs is to put all those untold stories into the algorithm or into the system so that those stories can be embedded into the itineraries or embedded into the trip planning and all that, right? So I think the practical aspect would be, again, to marrying both of them, the AI and the DMOs and the people in the DMOs, to tell the stories, and also to understand that AI itineraries or algorithms are a starting point, not the finished product, right? Which I think Abigail did a good job of presenting the concept, the proof of concept and all that. That would be my answer to your question, David. Thank you.
Very good. Well, I think it's a very important question that, and we see that kind of reflected in a lot of the questions that have come up in the Q&A. Another question there, it's addressed to both Faizan and Abigail. I'll give Abigail the floor here. Do we see an inevitable future where travelers have their own personal AI bot to conduct all these searches on their behalf? So it would be one AI chatting to another AI. What would this mean for destination marketing? And I think there's also this concept of authenticity embedded in that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone will disagree. I don't know that I see it as an inevitable future. I think where we're at right now, we do see a lot of feedback that there's still that level of potential mistrust or not loving when having a fully AI revolved method of searching. I think we still do, as kind of Faizan was saying before, there is still that element of, particularly in Gen Z, people like to use forums and talk to people and get personal recommendations from people. So I don't know that, at least in the near future, I do see that everyone will want AIs to be doing everything for them. But I do think we are at a point where most chatbots on websites will be AI led. I think because of that conversational nature that AI can bring, there's a lot of frustration with the current way that things like chatbots do with their sort of decision trees, and you're saying, where's my package? And it doesn't know what you're talking about. Whereas AI can really bring a way around that. So I do see a future where almost all assistants on websites are AI led. I think AI should always serve as a guide to people and not necessarily the one making decisions for people. So yeah, especially on our side for destination marketing, it means making sure that we were talking about before, you have that robust data behind you, that you've got those sort of inbuilt algorithms, that maybe you're upweighting some of your sustainable things. Because like we were saying, if you just let an AI do what it wants based on what's out there, it will be surfacing on your website or wherever the tool is, those sort of areas of over tourism. So yeah, in short, cautiously no, but maybe in some way.
Okay, good answer. I think it also reflects what Alex was saying, that there is always this, despite their 1 billion data sets, there is a human component curating it and looking through it to come up with the necessary inferences that will result. I have a question for Senia here. You looked at 100 plus destination marketing organizations. So from the destinations that participated in your research, what surprised you most about how quickly AI is being adopted, and where is adoption still lagging?
Actually, the research was, I think, almost 300 destination
300,
professionals,
wow.
but we've had just over 100 in the program in itself. But and I think what surprised us the most was really how bottom up it is in a lot of the destination organizations. So it still is, but especially in the beginning, it was really individually driven. So if you had someone in your team that was kind of into it and curious, they would kind of be the one to set the tone and sort of set the direction of how AI was evolving, rather than sort of the top down, this is how we want to use it. So now so I think the big surprise when we did the 25 survey was that it was still only 16% that had a strategy in place. When we kicked off the program this year, we did a quick little Zoom poll, and there we could see the number was definitely up, and also the number of destinations working on a strategy and a policy was increasing. So I think that's shifting, but I think it's taken a while sort of for the executive or the management level to catch up. Obviously, you have exceptions for that. You also have destinations, and I think that goes back to the question we had before about digitally less mature or smaller destinations. You could actually see some of the very first front runners were the smaller destinations. I think there was a great example in the US from Estes Park, a relatively small DMO that really was a front runner. They just decided, this is where we're going. This is what we're going to go all in on understanding and working on. And so they were actually sort of the best practice example that everyone was looking at in the beginning. But in general, I think that idea of the individual few becoming ambassadors for the rest of the organization, but not really having that integral view of how is this impacting not just one section, one department, one mode of working, but generally how we are designed as organizations.
Good. But I just want to reflect back on something that Alex said earlier. It may have been even in our discussion before the actual webinar, that tourism organizations generally, Alex, you found them to be quite slow on the uptake in terms of adopting AI. Have you seen that in your experience, Sinja, with these organizations and with these destination marketing professionals?
Well, I think it's relatively an unfair question to answer because I don't have a comparative group, so are they relatively slow in their uptake compared to what other organizations?
What would be as people who are involved in this tourism ecosystem, what generally, because it's not the first time I've heard somebody actually mention that we kind of lag behind what is happening.
I think in general, when you look at big analysis of the tourism industry in general, actually, it's very often pointed out for lacking behind in innovation. I think a lot of the DMOs are either fully or semi-public, which does mean that they have to kind of fall within a larger framework of regulation, which means that they do have to question critically when they go into something. They have budgets that run in certain cycles and so on. I think Abigail will know what I'm talking about as well. So I think that in general does, I don't know if it stifles innovation, but it means that they're not necessarily the front runners, but they are they have to really evaluate what they're doing with taxpayer money in many of these cases.
Fair enough. I mean, true. But I also think that it may be a deliberate policy in one respect, that we still have to retain that human element, that high touch thing that is talked about quite often today. Another question that is of interest to me as a marketing lecturer, I'm going to put it out there to Faizan. How is AI reshaping consumer decision-making processes?
That's a good question. So, I mean, I would just say, traditionally, the way we look at consumer behavior, it's a 5-step model, right? So we start from need recognition to information search, and then we evaluate different alternatives, and then we book and experience and all that. So I think when we look at this AI boom and all this AI algorithm and all that, I think it just changes the entire customer decision-making process altogether. It compresses it. So if you think about it, a lot of stuff that we do today is impulsive, based on what you are watching all of a sudden on social media feeds that come across, like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok and all that. So need recognition altogether goes out of it, especially when it comes to travel now. Then when we look at information search and evaluation, that's compressed into one conversational aspect of AI. So where you go into ChatGPT or something, you ask it for any suggestions, it just gives you all the alternatives, and then ultimately it also gives you a result at the end of it, right? And I just want to point your attention to something very interesting, and that's not ChatGPT interface. That's purely voice conversational agents where you are talking to Siri or Amazon Alexa or whatever, right? So when you are even now having a conversation in voice mode, you don't even look at all the alternatives. What suggested to you, just go with that. So in that sense, it is collapsing a lot of stages into the consumer behavior model. We don't know where would it end, how would it lead to satisfactions or booking intentions or all those type of things. But for sure it is a disruption right now to the traditional understanding of consumer behavior that we had.
Very good. You could write a book on that.
Or
you
a
probably are. Alex, you're adding something there, I see, in the chat. Would you like to tell us what it is?
So to the question that was there earlier, there is a YouTube video. I put a link on inside the chat, and it's by a person called Liam Ottley, Ottley. The name of the video is the 8 AI skills that will separate winners from losers in 2025. I find that was one of the best videos I've watched in terms of the different software that's available. He separates it into 4 key powers. He says the power to build, which is the creation of software and tools, the power to automate, where you create agents and automate workflows, the power to create and generate content, and the power to connect, which is building influence and audiences. And he recommends various tools under each one. So I have no affiliation with this website, but I just thought it was one of the best ones I've come across. So I would recommend use that as a starting point. The second thing I wanted to highlight is on the authenticity. Google's doing a lot of work on trying to find ways of validating the authenticity of content. Now, in 2024, 30% of the web content was AI generated. 30%. So, the question is, how do you know what is actually real? And what they're working on is a system around like a watermark. So it's still under development, but there is a lot of work by many companies to address this issue because it is a problem for everyone.
Very good. Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that, Alex. We have another question from Leslie. It might be a question for Abigail, as it relates to Scotland. Does anyone have any experience of using AI tools for visitor experience evaluation? So Leslie suggests that Edinburgh is using this.
Yeah, I don't have obviously specific experience myself, but I have seen the Van Gogh Museum. They have been using AI to do visitor evaluation. I can't quite remember who they developed the tool with. I think it's a tool they developed with an agency, but it uses the sort of Microsoft Azure language programming to use the natural language to sort of gather various insights from people that speak all sorts of languages in their museums, or in the comments, general sentiments, how people feel when they're in the museum. So I would definitely have a look into what they did. I think it was actually quite a few years ago. They might have been one of the first. It was maybe even 2024, 2023, they looked at that. So I definitely have a go at looking that up and see how they approached that and who they worked with on that. Because like I said, I don't have personal experience, but I did read quite a lot about the success they had there.
Very good. Do you think it's a good idea?
I think yeah. I think AI is very useful for things like that, things that are, I don't want to say admin, because obviously there is value in gathering user research and user feedback, but that sort of analyzing of the sentiments and the analyzing what they mean and sort of gathering those themes that you can improve on. I think AI is But it's one of the areas that AI is most valuable in, is that thing that you could do, but just takes a little bit of time and is easier to get a tool to do it for you. So I definitely think it's a very valuable area to start looking and investing in.
Very, very good. I agree, totally agree. We have another question from Camelia here. What can we do if AI recommendation algorithms pose a threat in worsening over tourism by favoring popular destinations over lesser known ones? Who would like to take that? I mean, obviously, over tourism, AI, it could be the perfect storm of making things worse or better. I'm not sure. Any takers?
I've got maybe a slightly relevant. Something we've been looking at at Visit Scotland in terms of generative optimization, which Sinja kind of talked about a little bit, is, what are the signals that AI uses to determine why it recommends a recommendation or a destination in a recommendation, or why it recommends a specific attraction. And we found that research has suggested that actually digital PR and online resources and general PR is a very, very big influence on that. So something that we've been looking into is, you can't really directly influence the recommendations in the same way you could on a content piece you make in ranking in Google. But if you're generating a lot of signals online through your PR that says, hey, this experience that's maybe lesser known is one of the best in my country, if there's lots of online resources talking about that, data behind that, and that is the general sentiment you're creating through continuous PR, you can influence what AI is suggesting, because obviously it learns from online resources, it sees what the sentiments are around things, it uses data online to make some of its recommendations. The reason it contributes to, over tourism so much is just because over tourism is because something's popular. Because something's popular, AI sees that it's a good suggestion. So you just have to generate that popularity through, an annual PR program. And that's something that we're looking at doing for our sort of lesser known experiences in Scotland to try and combat that.
I think Faizan has something to add there.
Yeah, so not directly about AI. Abigail did a good job explaining that, and that's exactly what I think about this as well. But I also think that it's important to understand over tourism has a lot more drivers than AI itself. So yes, right now, because we are talking about AI and there's a limelight on AI, so people are kind of blaming it for everything. But then there are other drivers of over tourism as well: cheap flights, short-term rental, properties and stuff like that. So I think it needs to be an overall perspective when we are talking about over tourism, and obviously fitting AI into that.
Well, I think, Faizan, there was also something that touched on this in your presentation, and one of the questions that you already addressed, I can't locate it anymore in the chat. When we looked at this fish and chip shop, or Fabriek Friet in Amsterdam, that went viral. Firstly, how? How did something like that happen? And secondly, is this not something that could be actually leveraged by DMOs for, particularly in cities like Barcelona or Amsterdam, where over tourism is a problem, to send tourists out, to diversify, to add tourists to regions that were undiscovered or areas of the city that could benefit?
That's right. I mean, if you look at the breakdown of people who were visiting the shop, these were people mainly from Europe. Because again, I mean, yes, it's a viral sensation and it's there on the social media and algorithm. But again, I mean, nobody from, let's say, South Africa would visit a price shop in Amsterdam, right? I mean, it would be really people who can get like a 30, 40 euros flight to the city and then, just stay there for a day or whatnot. So absolutely. I mean, this is an overall issue and AI is part of it. So it's not just one problem by itself.
Okay, very good. A question, we're going to finish up very shortly, but I have a question for Sinja. Again, with all these DMOs that you've dealt with in the destination marketing tourism professionals, do you see that, you talked about the strategy being bottom up. Do you see DMOs adapting a really strategic view on AI going forward?
I think I talked about the adoption being bottom up so far, but I think the strategy, yes, I do think that it's coming very much as more of a strategic priority from the sort of the upper levels of the DMOs now, and many are developing strategies, and I also see many that are developing it as, so it kind of generally started in the marketing department, or it started in the digital. If you have a digital team, it would have started there. And now I see a lot of the destination organizations that are really looking at it from a more integral cross organization perspective. How do you get everyone on board doing like internal upskilling across all departments and so on? So yeah, I do see a more overarching cross organizational strategy. And then I think so far the focus has been very much internally. How do we get our own organization up and running with this? Who are we in this space? What do we do as an organization? And now the focus is shifting to the rest of the destination and the ecosystem. So I see more and more destination organizations at different levels also engaging and working with their tourism industry and their sort of the museums, the hotels and so on, sort of enabling the wider ecosystem along the same journey.
And do any of you see, based on that, do any of you see, or have you felt in your dealings with across the entire sector that is there a backlash of any sort coming against the use of AI? Again, it could be rooted in this whole thing regarding authenticity and prioritizing humans over machines and whatnot. But do you see a backlash at all? And if so, what form does it take, and how might it be addressed? I'd open that to any of you.
Maybe I can go first. Yeah. I'm sure there are more, but what I think one of the things that you have seen so far is like that. Well, one of the big discussions so far has been like generating AI images of people, and using synthetic human avatars, for example, has been, I think, a topic in many places. And you've also seen it with the bigger brands, right? Using AI generated models in fashion campaigns and so on. I think that's kind of seeping into destination marketing discussions as well. So I think that's one backlash that we've seen, but there are more.
Very good. I think we're going to probably wrap it up here. Ian had a question. I'll leave that one in the chat regards Sunderland. He just couldn't help himself. I'd like to thank all of you for your absolutely fabulous presentations and insights. I think if we were to revisit this in 3, 6 months or 12 months time, we'll come up with something completely different, unexpected, new. But at the same time, the themes that you have looked at today will become more relevant, I think, and very important over the course of the next few years. So thank you, Senia, Faizan, Alex, and Abigail, and our audience around the AI Connected World for your attendance. I come away from this with a lot of food for thought, a lot of questions that are not quite answered, others that have been answered, but very, very interesting overall, very different perspectives that you brought on AI, but also a lot of commonalities. A recording will be made available of the webinar, and for those participating and those in the audience, we will send you a link in your emails within the next week to 10 days, I think. I'd also like to thank Professor Ian Yeoman for using his network to reach out to a really high quality panel, and for organizing the seminar and the series of seminars. With that said, I would just like to share my screen again, if I may, and tell you when the next seminar is going to take place. And hopefully you can see this. Our next webinar will be on the 25th of March. It's just loading for me at this point. I hope, yes. The 25th of March 2026 will take place from 12:30 Central European Time. It's where we launch, signals the launch of 2 books from Channel View, History, Meanings and Representations of the Modern Hotel and the Future of Hotels, Creating What's Next. A star-studded lineup is in store. I see that I'll be chairing it again. So we're very much looking forward to welcome you again on the 25th of March. In the meantime, I wish you all a very good day, wherever you might be. It might be nighttime in some areas of the world, morning somewhere else, or an afternoon. But thank you very much for your participation.